Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Claims Never Sleep. I am joined by Kyle again. Hey, Kyle, welcome back.
How's it going, Megan? How you doing?
I'm doing great. And, I really wanted you to join me on this podcast because today we're joined by Chris Dickerson. And Chris, I've known for a number of years, and he is described to me as the guy, the insurance guy of New York. And he knows everything about, you know, claims and defending claims and insurance in New York. And to me, you are our New York guy.
No, you couldn't tell? No.
Couldn't tell. Nothing gives it away.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
But, since, you're so familiar with New York claims, since that is what you do, clearly, I just thought it'd be a great opportunity for you, me, and he to sit down and just chat about all things New York. So with that, let's bring him in.
This is the Claims Never Sleep podcast, presented by Cruiser Mitchell, with your host, Meghan Henry.
Good afternoon, Chris. Welcome to Claims Never Sleep. I'm so happy to have you today.
Thank you, Megan. Good afternoon.
Just so our listeners know, you had joined me a few years ago on my prior podcast, and we had such an awesome conversation about all things New York, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so when I relaunched Claims Never Sleep, I think I reached out to you even when I was in the planning stages. I'm like, Chris, when are you coming on again?
Always fun.
So I'm so happy that we were able to get it together and you're here today. And of course I brought Kyle in because, Kyle's, all things New York as well. So, this is the New York episode.
Oh yeah, you couldn't tell from the last one. My accent came very clearly through. I'm going to try to be a little clearer this time, but yeah, there's no doubt of where I live and where I practice, I think. So.
Yeah, and before we really dive into to the meat of it, we can't start the show without, because last night the Mets had a big win. Knocked the Phillies out of the running for the World Series, or not for the World Series, but in the playoffs. So how are you feeling today, Kyle? I know you're a Mets fan.
Ecstatic. I mean, just big time Mets fan. Phillies are in the division. I don't know how many people are into sports that are listening out there, but they're a big division rival. They've been the bane of Mets' existence for a long time, and it's very, very satisfying to eliminate them, go on to the NLCS. And what's amazing to me as a history guy and a sports guy as well, that they've been around for a long time. They've been in the same division forever. They had never played each other in the playoffs until this year, which is kind of mind-boggling. No, never. It's kind of mind-boggling. So very excited about them moving on to the NLCS, and we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, well, we were talking before I pressed record that Chris is, spoiler, Chris is a Yankees fan. And you guys are talking about the possibility of a Subway Series. That would be very, very exciting.
Oh, sure would. I can't wait for that if that does happen. And I'm sure I'll be chatting a lot with Kyle.
Oh yeah.
Or maybe not chat. Maybe a lot of shit chatting, like a lot of a lot of banter.
Trash, but, this is a big deal here in New York. So we'll hope. Fingers crossed.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm the world's biggest baseball fan. I honestly, I've watched probably 2 games the whole year, but I watched one of the game the other night that the Phillies won. I was like, well, that was exciting.
It's exciting especially during the playoffs.
Yes,
yeah.
But I'm happy that I will get my sleep back because as I recall that these games end up going very late at night and and you don't sleep very much. So I'm happy for myself. I'm not going to endure that, but I wish the Mets and the Yankees all the best, and I hope that you guys do make it to the World Series and play against each other. That'd be fun.
Oh, you might want to cut that out for your Philly neighbors, though.
Oh boy, they're tough. They're tough over in Philly.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's licking their wounds today. So, as of last night, it was like, oh, they suck. They're terrible.
I've been to Philadelphia a few times. It's a beautiful city. Those fans over there, they're tough, boy. They're the only ones I've ever seen throw snowballs at Santa Claus.
I know.
Remember that in the football game?
Yeah, crazy.
It's crazy, but it's a lot of fun. So
Yeah,
those
it's
Philly fans.
it's not a safe place to be an outsider, that's for sure. There's not much inclusion happening down in
Yeah, I'm
South
also
Philly.
a football fan, and the Eagles took our top running back from the Giants, and they now have Saquon Barkley over there, who
Mhm.
is doing great. He'll probably get booed a few times, but especially if Philly doesn't do well, the Eagles. So there's that connection too between New York and
Yeah.
Philadelphia.
Yes. Yeah. Kyle, are you a Giants fan too?
Unfortunately, I'm a Jets fan. So,
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
but
It was a line. Jets and Mets kind of go together.
yeah, the only team that's successful I root for is the Rangers. They're my favorite team. I'm a hockey guy,
Mhm.
so and they play the Flyers, and that's a pretty solid rivalry too down there. So
It is.
Yes.
the Flyers have not been good in recent
Yeah.
years. So the Rangers have been very good. So
Yes.
It
Yeah.
looks like it. Yeah.
Well, maybe this is the Flyers' year. I don't know.
Mm. Don't know about that.
they got a long way to go, I think. So.
Yes.
Well, we shockingly are not here to talk sports, although we could if you really want to. But we're here to talk, all things New York claims and insurance and all of that. But before we dive in, Chris, how I introduced you to Kyle, I said, you got to come on the podcast because Chris is New York. He is the New York guy. So when it comes to insurance and claims, so tell us, how did you get into this industry? Tell us a little bit about your career path.
Okay, so I grew up in Denver, Colorado. While I was in Denver, I got a job as an older guy, well, as a grown-up with AT&T, and I worked at AT&T for 16 years. The last 8 years, I worked in claims. AT&T did have a claims department.
I'm sure they
What-
did. I mean, laying
Yeah.
wires and all of
Wires,
that.
phones,
Yeah.
phone systems for businesses, some slip and falls, things like that. I really enjoyed that. So when AT&T, who was at the forefront of shipping jobs overseas, shipped the factory that I worked in overseas, and so I took an early retirement from them. And I liked claims so much, and I stayed in it. And I got a job after that with TWA, the airline.
Oh, TWA, that's a blast from the past.
Blast. Really young people don't even know what TWA is. Kyle, do you know what TWA is?
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember. I mean, I grew up in Queens, but I live in Long Island now. And one of the big plane stories back in the '90s was that Flight 800 that crashed out in Long Island, and all the crazy stories about that. And then my parents worked at JFK for Customs for many years, and they have the TWA terminal that's there. They now put in now it's like a fancy hotel, like a interesting experience hotel. So yeah, TWA is has a very big New York connection. Absolutely.
Yes, that's true. That hotel is beautiful over there, by the way. So I worked in claims at TWA, which I have to say was probably my most fun job, because I would have to go overseas. They would say, "We need you to go to Tel Aviv to hold the witness's hand. We need you to go to Paris. We need you to go to." And I love to travel, so I did a lot of traveling over there, and had a lot of fun. And then TWA decided that they were going to move their headquarters from New York to St. Louis. Nothing against St. Louis, but I didn't want to go to St. Louis. So I said goodbye to TWA, and not long after that, I got a job. I was recruited to come to the city of New York, in the claims capacity. And that was 28 years ago.
Wow.
I came here, and one of the first things we did was look at why the city was paying so much on these claims. And it turns out that the city didn't really understand contractual obligations or insurance, so they just paid the claims.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, we're going to change that. So we did. We actually changed that. Now I'm seeing a whole different world when it comes to insurance and claims. Outside in the insurance industry, they know that they're probably going to be hearing from the city. They want coverage. Uh, the brokers all know that we have requirements for our contractors. We put out billions of dollars every year in contracts, and there are requirements for that. You know, insurance requirements, their obligations. Um, and so it's a whole different world. The defense firms, most defense firms know about the city, and I'm actually pleased to see how it has changed and how it has thrived to where it is now. Lots of law firms focus on insurance defense now. They know about risk transfers. They know how to work with the city uh, in the industry. We have that tripartite relationship, the insurance company and the clients, which is the city in this case. Some people get that confused, and I have to remind them that there is a tripartite relationship, and we are your client. But most of the major insurance companies know about that, and they know how to work around that, and work with that, and work with us and the law firms on getting coverage for these cases. So from that point to this point, I'm quite pleased with where we're at. Long way to go, and insurance law always changes. I don't know if you heard about the RICO claims.
Oh, yes.
I don't know if you have, Megan, but
I haven't. What's going on with the RICO claims?
so there is a Texas firm and an insurance company that has a relationship with them. They have been bringing claims against fraudulent plaintiffs firms and the related doctors and the medical centers. It's big news. The plaintiff industry, I'm not going to speak for them, but I know that they're kind of shook up by that.
Yeah.
Several other firms have abandoned their claims. So far, I've seen about 300 where we thought was fraudulent. And there's more to come on that. So that has been huge for us. I'm kind of surprised that it took a Dallas firm to bring that. Then again, I'm not, because the relationships here in New York with the insurance companies and the judges and even the plaintiffs firms, I think they were hesitant to bring such a major claim like that. Yeah. So they went and to credit the insurance company or the organization, they went and found this Dallas firm, and it's big news here, and it's been helpful. You know, not to sound jaded, but I think that if we were able to spend more time on the valid claims, we could deal with those better, because I'm going to say at least half of these claims, I think, are fraudulent, or to a degree. I mean, how do you slip and fall with bruises and all end up getting spinal surgery?
Right.
I'm like, what? and so that's been a big problem. So now that has happened, that's been very helpful for us over here, Megan.
Well, and I think that's a problem we hear about a lot too. I mean, I've heard about it for years in Philly as well. Like some firms having certain relationships with doctors' offices that, pad up the bills or perform surgeries or suggest surgeries that aren't necessarily needed. So the dollars attached to the claim are higher. And then you see certain firms always working with the same doctor's office or the same chiropractor or whatever it is. And then people catch on and they shift and they go to another one. Is it similar to that was unveiled?
Yes, it's very similar. That is what has happened. And like I mentioned, so far they've dropped 300 lawsuits that they acknowledge. Well, they say that these may have been fraudulent, but they don't want to be counsel anymore for at least 300 and more. And there's more being looked at. So it's very true. and like I said, if we could focus on the real claims, I think everybody would be better off. And the folks that they're using, to file a claim, usually are folks uh, not sophisticated enough to know that, oh, I shouldn't be going to this doctor for spinal surgery on my boobs.
Yeah.
So, and they're using them. So hopefully that can at least slow it down big time.
Well, and it's also very problematic for the doctors. I mean, their license are on the line as well.
Oh yeah. So some doctors have gone to jail
Yeah.
here. Yeah. Some plaintiffs, lawyers have gone to jail. And so, but it needs to be more. I don't wish bad on anybody, but if you're bringing fraudulent claims and you're doing fraudulent things with people who really aren't sophisticated and know what's going on, I don't have much sympathy for you, especially if you're trying to take money from the city or from insurance companies or contractors where it's just not valid. So I don't have much sympathy for that. So I'm happy to see that it's been focused on, and we'll see what happens.
I mean, I'm sure the reason why it was a Dallas firm is probably no local firm wanted to touch this because they would have a giant mark on their back. But if it's an outsider, now although if it was Philly and it was a Dallas firm, it would be like, oh, of course it's Dallas coming after us.
Yes, that's true.
Go back to NFC East rivalry there.
Yeah, there's definitely a big one there. But yeah, so I can understand why a New York firm would be hesitant.
Yeah.
But a Dallas firm or an outside firm, they don't practice here. They don't have to worry about being in front of judges or dealing with insurance companies or even the plaintiffs because they brought a claim. They can do what they need to do, and they're doing it. They're doing it big time. I give them great credit. They're very thorough. They're doing a really good job. When they name you in their complaints, they have it pretty much nailed down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's good to see. It's good to see.
And so outside of that, though, I mean, I'm sure your claims encompass so many different things. But over the last few years, have you seen a rise or an increase in any particular type of claims that you see come across your desk or through your office?
So I'll tell you what I oversee here. So we have 38 school bus companies as contractors.
Yeah.
School buses, I love what they do. They have a great mission for the city. They're also a big yellow target. So I see stage claims, people pull up and then slam on their brakes right in front of them, and they hit them from behind, or they all kind of stage stuff. Some of it's legit though, so we have to deal with those. I deal with the School Construction Authority. The School Construction Authority builds schools, new schools, and performs major rehabilitation on our older schools. Lots and lots and lots of labor law there.
Yeah.
There's the School Construction Authority. They handle that. The city provides funding for that. So I work with their team on those. So we see lots of labor law and auto and the school buses. We have homeless shelters here.
Yeah.
So during COVID and shortly thereafter, we had a major migration of immigrants or undocumented folks that came to New York, or some were shipped to New York from Texas and some of these other states. And so we had a crisis. And so we had emergency contracts put out to shelter these folks. And we looked everywhere for homeless shelters. We had pretty sophisticated network of shelters, but we were overwhelmed. So we signed contracts with hotels to use some of their facilities, and some of the hotels we're still contracting with them for certain floors now. on the lower floors. So that was billions of dollars. The federal government did come in finally and help the city with that. So it's kind of getting under control. But the claims there, usually the claims are not big dollar claims. Somebody got into a fight.
Yeah.
Somebody, stole their stuff and they beat them up. A couple of stabbings over there, they're pretty serious.
Yeah.
One was a model who came to New York and unfortunately ended up in the shelter, and she got into a fight and was stabbed and killed.
Wow.
God.
That was very sad. So we deal with those.
Have you had any issues though with the homeless shelters, like them taking up space in hotels? Any issues between the residents who are like supposed to be residents of the shelter, between them and the hotel guests? Have you had any issues with that?
Well, so they're doing a pretty good job of keeping them separate.
Mm-hmm.
I know if I booked a room at the Marriott and I came in and I found that it was being used as a shelter, I'd be like,
Right, that's what I'm like. Oh, I'm spending $450 a night. Like, I could have saved myself some bucks.
Yeah, you could have went down the street somewhere, but I haven't really seen much of interaction, especially no violence between guests and the shelter residents. Like I said, they kind of keep them separate and they use different interests and stuff like that. So I'm down by the World Trade Center and there's beautiful hotels down there. And if you go into one of these hotels through an entrance, you would probably not even know that it was part of it was being a shelter unless you saw some people, but they kind of keep them separate too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually working pretty good. The claims are a problem, but like I said, I'm not that concerned about the claims. They're usual physical attacks and things like that.
I feel like they've got the lottery ticket. Those people staying at the hotel as part of the shelter, they've got the good deal.
Yeah, it's not too bad to be homeless and on the street, and then the next day you're in the Marriott. So
yeah, not bad.
That's not bad. That gives you, and I don't resent that. That gives you a chance to get on your feet.
Yeah.
To go out there, get a job. Make a contribution to the city.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have any animosity or ill will towards those folks. If it's just start to see abuse, then that could possibly change. But
right,
I don't really see that right now. So what else? So we deal with foster care here.
Mm-hmm.
Now those can be very sad, very tragic. And we have this entity or this acronym called the CVA, Children Victims Act. Have you heard about that?
Yes.
Okay, so that's very difficult to kind of deal with. I understand the sentiment behind it. If something bad happened to you as a child, 30 years, I've even seen 40, 50 years ago, and you blocked it or something, you should have some kind of recourse. But then again, how do you defend those?
Right.
We tried to get insurance coverage and we kept, when I first came, I said, we need these contracts. We need to keep them. And people were like, yeah, why do you want to do that? So I said, you just never know. And so sure enough, we were able to go back and find some of the older contracts and go to insurance companies and say, here's this contract, here's this clause, we need coverage. And it worked. But anything prior to 1998 or so, nobody has those contracts. And so you're kind of on your own. We do have coverage for a lot of those, but some of those we don't. And so those are kind of working their way through the court system. A lot of municipalities, not just New York, which is a big city with lots of funding, but some of the smaller cities are like, how do we even deal with this? And the churches and the various organizations in those places. And so it's back in Albany, which is where our legislation is, to try and get funding to help those people out, including the city, but not so much the city, but the smaller organizations, Boy Scouts, Catholic Charities, all of these people to help him deal with that. They were able to go back. Well, like I said, I've seen cases go back 40, 50 years. And I'm like, so now you're 65, 70, and you're making this claim. How do we even go about that? But that's where we're at with those. And so we're doing okay with that.
Now, Chris, do you have in your department, do you have a team of staff counsel that you work with, or do you partner up mostly with outside law firms, or is it like a mix of both?
So we have a torts division here,
Mm-hmm.
which is one of the major divisions in the country for handling torts. They each do their thing, and then when they need insurance or they think there might be a chance for insurance, they will come to us here. There is, in my division, there are about 20 lawyers or so, and then there's there's 4 claim specialists. So we are extremely busy all day, every day, dealing with that. I mean, the city has probably 30,000, 40,000 open claims.
I'm sure.
Yeah. I have myself about nearly 5,000. So
at once?
That's
That's quite the docket of claims you have on your plate, Chris.
Which is why I think it's very important to deal with law firms of integrity, people that you can trust and know that they're going to help defend you, and when things come up, they let you know, versus ones who don't, or who are confused about the tripartite relationship.
Yeah.
And do whatever the insurance company says, and all of a sudden it doesn't work, and then they come to you and go, "Hey, you have liability on this case. It's only going to cost you $8 million." What? That happened to me today. He said, "Oh, this claim is going to be $15 million, and there's a mediation, and that didn't work, and so now we have a potential trial date. We're going to try one more mediation. The man is $14.5 million. You have $8 million in coverage." So the judge wants you to be there. I'm like, what are you even talking about?
And was this like the first time you'd heard of your potential exposure?
No, I did hear about it, but it was a couple years ago, and I'm like, okay, you guys can solve this, and this claim should be fall under our policies. It should be, and that was my thinking until today. So I'm like, well, I can't be there. We don't have. You guys need to solve this in your authority to him, counsel, and the insurance companies. They haven't responded back yet, but we'll see what happens with that. So with that kind of open caseload, you really need to work with people, like I said, that you can trust and of high integrity and are not confused about the relationships. Because you can't, with that workload, you can't do everything all at once. I try very hard. I work very hard to stay on top of things, to get coverage, to maintain the coverage, and to deal with lots and lots of insurance companies and lots of defense firms. But with that kind of a caseload, you can't do everything. No. So it's important for me to meet and get to know law firms and lawyers. I know that in today's world, people work remote, and people don't really want to come into the city anymore, and people don't really. I think we're losing some of our social skills. Some of the younger people don't want to go out and meet people or go to these meetings, and or even the seasoned people who have gotten used to being at home. They don't want to come out anymore, and so I guess as an old school guy who likes to meet people and get to know people, it's kind of a different world for me. But the technology is great so far. This has been really, really great. This has worked amazingly well for me on our podcast here. Our Zoom meetings and our Teams meetings is finally starting to work. So that is, starting to work some.
It only took like 4 years.
Place, yeah. It's a long time to get the technology right, and and all of that. I think it's good, but I don't think it replaces getting out and meeting people and saying, hey, Kyle, I have this case, I want to talk to you about it. And you got a couple minutes face to face, because Kyle's going to go, no, Chris, I can't. I'm not picking on you, Kyle.
No, you're good. No, but I'm kind of with you. Like, I agree. I think in general, I think having this tool is a great asset. But I do think there is a major value in interpersonal connection and meeting someone face to face. Because I do really feel like people, even on a Zoom call, you pick up on the cues that people have in a conversation. You get a better sense of who someone is when you're in person with somebody. And I think trying to find that equilibrium of utilizing the technology to our benefit, but also not losing sight of that we need to be together in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It's a lot of times easier to figure out problems when you are in a room with somebody versus on a phone or even on a Zoom call, because it's easy to just be like, all right, the case isn't selling, I'm just going to click off. Whereas if you're in the room together or you're in the same vicinity, there's a natural, a greater desire, I guess, to work something out because you're all here together here and now. Let's not walk out of this room or out of this building without resolving something. So I agree. I know I'm a younger guy, but I actually agree with your take on this. I think it has to be a synthesis of virtual and in person.
Yeah, I'm kind of a mix. Like I think there is a lot of value of the in-person interaction, but when I'm in like my need to think and write or dive deep, I want to do it at home, like because I can concentrate better. There's less distractions for me, but I've always found whenever, and this goes way back, even before COVID, whenever I was in an office, to me, it was like social hour. I was like, oh, well, I got to go, catch up with so-and-so. And if I want to get more done, I need to cut out all the distractions from myself and just do it here.
I understand that. So the compromise, I think, is that, and we're doing that here, is a hybrid kind of scenario. You can work from home 3 days a week, but then you come in for 2 days a week. So that way you can kind of keep it close. But so I have to come in 5 days a week. But my people don't. But when something happens or I need to talk to somebody, like I want to go and run and talk to Eric or somebody, and I have to check to see, is he going to be here today? Yeah, no, okay, so this has to wait until tomorrow. And then, of course, everything happens during the day that happens. And then tomorrow comes and I don't talk to him, so then we have to put it off. But I think that is a fair compromise for folks like you who want to dive in into whatever that they're dealing with at the moment. But then, if I were your boss, I would say, Meghan, you need to come in here a couple of days a week and need to see you.
Well, it's a good thing I'm the boss.
Yeah. That's good.
Of myself.
Yeah, well, the hybrid model is what we have here in New York. I mean, it's because we're a national firm, and even though like I'm in an office now, but we log into a remote desktop, and Meghan does too, and based in Atlanta. So even when you're in an office, we already have this portability and flexibility, that's at our fingertips. But I do come in like about 3 to 4 times a week, maybe home for one day. That's just me. And I think it's a very good mix and very good balance for, balancing a home life. I have 2 young kids, and if I got to do something, pick up kids, like today my dad's doing it, but I have my youngest daughter goes to pre-K to get out at 2:30. Like right now, he's picking her up right now, so I could be here. And but having that flexibility, I think it makes it very is very good, I think.
Yeah, that's awesome and good that your dad can do that.
No, blessed.
He does it with joy to pick up the grandkids.
Oh yeah.
So my kids are much older than that. I have grandkids myself, and they live in Texas and in Connecticut, so I don't get to quite just drop and pick them up for school and stuff like that. We have to make arrangements. I do like the technology of being able to do FaceTime with them.
Mm-hmm.
So I get to see them and talk to them a lot, and then I schedule trips and go and see them that way. So that the technology is good for that, and I treasure that. So I'm sure your dad does too, and you know, be sure and say thanks to him.
Oh, every day I text him every day, and just it really is a blessing.
You know?
Yeah.
So Megan, you have kids, right? Yours are a little older.
Mine are older. I mean, they're 11 and 9.
Yeah.
But again, that's the same thing. Like my older one just started middle school this year, and she is on like the middle school field hockey team, and they have, their games are at 3:45, and I'm very thankful that I can, go to her games. I wouldn't want to miss her games just because, I think it for her to feel like she has that support, from her, at least some family member there to watch her play when when she gets in for those, however long she gets blessed as a sixth grader to take the field, and I wouldn't want to miss it either. So I'm very thankful to have that flexibility because again, these times are short though too. Like as much as I think the season ends next week and I'm like, okay, I'm kind of happy the season's going to end too though, because like some weeks there's 3 games in a week. I'm like, okay, we can only do 3:45 so many times. It gets a little dicey at days.
I think it's great that you guys get to. I didn't do this in my earlier years. That I had to be in the office. Somebody else would have to do that stuff. But I think it's great that you're able to do that now and go to the games and pick up your kids and spend the time with the kids. That's very, very important. Probably the most important thing to me. Yeah. So I'm glad that you're able to do that.
Although it's downturns. Like they had a half day today. Like they came home at like 1, and my older one has like I don't even know how many friends she has over. And just like a few minutes ago, they're all standing. I have glass doors to my office, and they see me with the headset on, and they are all making faces at me, knowing that I'm here on video and recording, and they're just trying to distract me. There's that too.
That's precious. That's cute. So I'll finish up on what the claims I deal with. I stopped at foster care. I also deal with Governor's Island. We have a beautiful island here in New York it's called. Have you been there, Kyle?
Oh, I haven't been, but I know that there's a lot of like concerts out there. I think like Electric Zoo or something is held out there.
Yeah,
things like that. So I imagine that's interesting to have to like handle those. I imagine the city has to work with those insurance companies and those type of issues, and the potential for injuries and stuff is vast with a big concert like that. I would imagine.
Yeah, like security claims and like public
drunkenness. It's very beautiful. If you ever get a chance, you should go over there and just walk around. It's green and it's a couple of outside hotels there. I say outside, I mean they have tents where you can camp, but it's also a hotel. It's just really spectacular, and I was asked to deal with those claims. So I'll deal with those. I deal with Central Park, all of our city parks. We have beautiful parks here, Megan. Mm-hmm. Sometimes these limbs fall. I've learned more about trees than I ever thought possible. Fortunately, not that much. So we'll deal with those. We'll deal with the Lincoln Center, which is an impressive organization or entity over here. Great concerts. It's a fabulous hall. Mostly Stipple Falls over there, but I work with the city with the Lincoln Center organization and Department of Parks. Traffic signals, believe it or not. Everybody, when there's an accident, I learned this too. They blame the traffic signal.
They're never working right?
Yeah, wasn't working. It was green, and the other side was green, and so we've learned a lot about that. And it can't work. Technically, you can't have 2 green lights. So
no, it doesn't work that way.
Doesn't work that way.
It's called programming.
Yeah. I've dealt with crane collapses. We had a few of those. I'm very unfortunate, but we've been lucky actually, I think, because there's so much construction. People complain, the industry complains about insurance and how much it costs and how they can't build in New York anymore. My response always is, do you know what the New York City bird is? It's the
No.
crane. Because they're everywhere. So I'm not quite buying that. Fortunately, they don't collapse that often, but we've have had a couple of those. So that's kind of what I deal with here. And so your caption is the claims that don't sleep.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't stop here.
Yeah, it just occurred to me how well our title works with the New York tagline.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, one thing that I don't want to belabor COVID because we've talked. I mean, I feel like I've talked about COVID like over and over and over again, but there has been such a shift and change in cities in light of COVID, um, and you being there for 28 years, like have you seen a major shift in New York City since COVID? I mean, we know the shift that happened during COVID, but like since then, like we've seen so many changes. Like with San Francisco is such a different city now than it was pre-COVID. I think Philly is such a different city than it was before. Have you seen that type of change in New York?
So the short answer is now, not so much. It's
Hmm.
it's kind of getting back to
That's
usual.
good.
You
Yeah.
go outside and you see thousands and thousands of people. That's the way it is now. It was a transition to go from the peaks of COVID
Hmm.
to where it is now. I remember I lived not far from Central Park, and during COVID, and I thought I would go out and get some air and walk through the park, and I came upon this field hospital, and next to the field hospital were hundreds of caskets, and I'm like, that shook me to the core. I'm like, this is
Yeah.
so it's gotten much better from those days. But no, I think even with masks, you don't really see people don't really wear those much anymore. You might see some in the subways.
Hmm.
People are wearing masks, but
It's not a bad
thankfully,
idea.
yeah,
It's just a lot of
thankfully,
germs down there.
yeah, I understand that, but and thankfully, I would say that we are through that. It was very difficult for us to get through that, but
I just
I think
yeah.
we're through it now.
Like I've just noticed like even in Philly, it used to be so vibrant downtown and now it is just not that way. It's just so many businesses and offices have pulled out and there's just less going on in the city. Um and it seems that New York hasn't had that major shift that I think I've seen in Philly. I mean, Philly's improving, but it's definitely it's not like how it was before, and the crime has just it's spread and it's gone up in areas that like you would that before were not. It's still a city, it's not 100% safe anywhere, but there's definitely been an increase in the spread of crime throughout Philly.
Is that right?
Hmm.
So I was last in Philly 2 years ago. I went, no, it must have been a year and a half ago, and I did start to see some changes down there, but I still thought it was pretty vibrant. There were lots of people around. Um, I did kind of notice that you have to be you have to be careful and safe, but you have to do that anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, Des Moines, Iowa. You've got to be careful in what you do, but I hope you guys catch up to us because I think it sounds like we're a little bit ahead of you.
Yeah, as always.
Yeah, well,
Baseball.
we're the world's greatest city. But so is Philadelphia. I love Philadelphia, and there's lots of great cities. But I do think that I have traveled the world, and I do think that New York is probably the world's greatest city.
No.
For what it does for people, how many billions of dollars it spends on people, and the architecture and the things to do. But I'll get off my New York.
That's okay. I mean, that's what this podcast is supposed to be about.
Yeah.
So, but one thing, like, as for generally claims, it's such a large. Obviously, it's a large city with such a large infrastructure, and you've streets upon streets upon streets that the city has to maintain. I mean, I just imagine you see, in addition to the crane falls and all these other claims you're talking about. I mean, the trip and falls must be like astronomical, the amount that you see of people falling on your streets.
You're right, and it's funny you mentioned that.
Valid and invalid. I'm not saying they're all valid claims.
Right. I treat each one, at least, especially at first, as if it's valid. But so we do have a problem in that we have to mill our streets and pave our streets.
Mm-hmm.
So when you mill a street, you strip off the asphalt and it leaves a bunch of ridges and bumps all over. I just hate seeing those because the claims that come out of those are tremendous. The contractors are like crying. The insurance companies are like, we're not covering that. I'm thinking of a way that we could resolve that. I mean, it has to be done, and New York does a hell of a job in paving and repaving our streets, but we do see lots and lots of slip and falls from that. On sidewalks, we're not really responsible for those anymore. The owners are responsible. So that has been a huge help, because when I first came here, I'm like, why are we responsible for a sidewalk over there in the outer edges of Queens that we have no idea what's going on? So now that falls into the responsibility of the owners and especially downtown, the bigger hotels and companies. They have to take care of their own sidewalks, and so they have to deal with their own lawsuits. So as far as the street milling and those claims, we see lots and lots of those. The sidewalks per se, we don't see that much anymore.
Yeah. Well, that's helpful because
it's very helpful.
And what was that city administrative code? I think 217. I forget the specific number or provision that shifts the liability to the homeowners. So I know, and that's what we do a lot now. Obviously, is a lot of times we get slip and falls from businesses in the boroughs, and we're usually the ones that have to defend those. But in terms of because there are a lot of times where the city is brought in as usually a third party defendant or some other, or else a co-defendant. When you're looking at the contracts that the city requires between a contractor, are there certain provisions that you require that to make sure that the city is sufficiently protected? Because I see countless times when we're doing labor law cases, you'll see these very shoddy subcontractor agreements that don't have the proper language for indemnity and insurance requirements. It's almost a shame, because you're like, if you had just a proper contract, the loss transfer could have been easy. So are there things that you look for, or are you involved in the crafting of the contracts for the city to ensure that they have the proper, insurance status, or the indemnification runs in your favor?
So I'm gonna answer that in two parts. We have lots of golf courses here, believe it or not.
That shocks me.
Yeah. And so in those contracts, they are responsible for the maintenance of the sidewalks around them. So I have several cases right now where we got sued because somebody slipped and fell on the sidewalk. I'm like, nope, that's going to be that golf course over there. They're responsible for that. And I go to them, and they go, yeah. So the insurance company says, oh, okay, we will cover that. And so, yes, they are required in the major contracts. I'm sorry for the phone.
That's okay.
It'll go away in a minute. We do have that in our contracts, that you are responsible for the sidewalks and the means of egress and egress around your property. So we do have those in all the major buildings down here, downtown, in Midtown, Uptown. Those are in there. We have a contracts division here, and we have worked with them, especially at the start of when I came here, to solidify those contracts. And now even plaintiffs have said to me that those contracts are rock solid. So we do have a lot of risk transfer for those. Somebody with third party is in. I don't know why. A lot of times I don't know why we're even sued. I think it's that people don't do their research.
Probably not.
And it's easy to name the city, because if you file a notice of claim with the city, it's going to be investigated, and they're going to say, no, it wasn't us. It was ABC Construction over there, and you're going to have to sue them. And so I think we do their investigative work for them. and so then they go into AB construction, but now you filed your notice of claim, so you name the city. So I just consider those we're just along for the ride. Sooner or later, you're going to realize that this not the city. You should drop it, and if you don't, then it's just going to go to summary judgment motion, and we're going to win, and we're going to be out. So it's very interesting, Kyle, and we'll meet more. We'll talk some more about this because it's interesting to know that your focus on what you do and what we do. I was hoping to do that with Meghan, but she's in Philadelphia.
So and I know we're almost out of time, but I wanted to ask you this though, because you mentioned this earlier about counsel, and do you have since you've been in this industry for so long and you've dealt with so many attorneys, are there some traits that stand out to you as like what you really are looking for when you are hiring outside counsel over some other traits?
Okay, sure. So one of the first things I ask when I meet someone as outside counsel is this, and I'm sure Kyle and you will answer this question properly, but a lot of people don't. And I say, we have a case, and the insurance company wants you to make a motion, but we don't think it's time to make a motion. Who are you going to listen to, and what are you going to do? And people say, I'll spare you this because I know you already know, but people say, well, I have to listen to the insurance company because they're the one that's paying. And I'm like, nope, that's the wrong answer.
You're like, next.
Yeah. That's just the wrong answer. You listen to your client, right? Mm-hmm. And we may think that it's not time to file a motion for our own municipal reasons. And so then I mentioned tripartite relationship. So I will go to an insurance company and say, you know what, we don't think that should be done at this time. And you can usually work it out. But if they say no, we want it done, and that law firm does it, then there's a problem. We won't use that law firm anymore. So those kinds of things I like to know about the integrity of the law firm. I think that's important. I like to know if you have cases against us. If you're a plaintiff against us, that's not going to work too well.
Probably not.
No,
I wouldn't think so.
Yeah,
that's a conflict.
That's a conflict. And so if I ask them that, and they say, "Oh, we don't have any cases," and then you go back and you check and you find out that they have 25 against you, that's another strike.
Well, so, I mean, that's just like showing dishonesty, right. Like it could be. I mean, first of all, you do a conflicts check, but in a conversation, someone might say, "Oh, I don't think we have any cases," and maybe they didn't know there's someone else from their firm had a case or two. I mean, I think that's an honest. Oh, they didn't know. You find out when you check. Okay, but actually, it turns out we have a conflict. We can't take this case or whatever. But by bold-faced lie.
Yeah. So to your point, so this came up about 2 weeks ago. A pretty large firm here, of whom I know the managing partners. I said, "You guys," it was brought to my attention that you guys have cases against us. And he goes, "I don't think so, Chris. I'll check and get back to you." I said, "Okay." So he did, and later in the afternoon, he goes, "Well, so we do have some cases against you, and so we've decided that we would rather have those cases than to have the cases that we're defending you in."
Oh, wow.
Because he thought, that he was doing some school bus work, and he had about 12 of those, but he had many, many other cases. So I said, "Really?" I said, "Well, that's your decision to make." So I put up all of the cases that he had, and he had 12 the school bus cases, but he had about 55 other cases that he was defending us in. I said, "If you want to give up all of those cases, that's up to you." So he said, "Let me get back to you." Later on, there's 3 of them, all of the names on the door, called me back and said, "We were wrong. We do not want to lose our relationship with the city. We do not want to lose all of these cases. We will fix the conflicted cases, by the end of the day, so that we can have a good relationship with you. So I will give them a chance, but if they come back and they say no, or you can make that chance. If you'd rather be a plaintiff, that's up to you in your firm. But if you want to defend the city, the world's greatest city, try and do
You call
right.
Kyle.
Yeah, right.
The taxpayers of New York, of which Kyle is one, and me, then I welcome to you aboard, and I'm sure that we could work together in many, many cases. That's my test, and it usually works. There's a lot of very good law firms and lots of very good lawyers here in New York, some of the best, I think, and it's my honor and privilege to work with them, especially when they feel the way I do about the city of New York. That means a lot.
And I think, and I know you have a hard stop in like a minute, but to summarize, what you're really looking for though is integrity, right? Like,
Yes.
Which sadly should not be something that is lacking. But too many people these days, I feel like it is. And I mean again, and you talk about the tripartite relationship. When it's a normal insured, there's usually not a problem, right? Usually everyone's aligned in the same direction. But with a unique client like a municipality, especially the city of New York, it really is. It's a whole different ball game, and you really do have to really understand and know that insurance company, they're paying you the bills, but your client ethically, not just integrity for yourself, but under the ethical code of New York, for the lawyers, they're your client. They're the ones you had to be protecting, and having the ability to understand that relationship, even in the face of some difficult choices, is crucial. I think to being a good lawyer.
Yes.
I agree with you 100%, Kyle. And like I said, there are many lawyers here that feel that way. But unfortunately, there are a lot of times it's the money that talks, and so they'll say whatever and do whatever. But the insurance company is going to be like, "I will send you 100 cases. You do what we want you to do," and they're going to do that. So you have to kind of sort those out. That's with the conflict checks, the meeting in person, having discussions like we just had. I think are tremendous for the city.
Yeah.
I love, like I said, working with people such as yourself and your firm, and trying to do the right thing for the taxpayers.
Yeah. And that's really what it's all about too.
Exactly.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for joining us. I know you have a hard stop, so I don't want to keep you much longer. But again, I can't thank you enough for taking the time out to sit down and talk to Kyle and I. It's always a pleasure, and I'm so glad I got to see your face again. I hadn't seen you in some time, and hopefully sometime soon we can come up and see you in person and have that in-person interaction like we were talking about.
Thank you, Megan. I should hope so. And if it's not during the holiday season, let's do it in the spring when it's nice and warm and we can get out and take a walk, and I can show you some of the sites here.
Although there's nothing like New York around the holidays.
Yes. Absolutely, yeah. It's been a minute since I've been in Manhattan, but yeah, absolutely. And let's go Mets, let's go Yankees. I'll even say that to you. Let's go Yankees. So we'll see. Hopefully we'll have November baseball to be watching.
That'll be fun.
And for all our listeners out there, of course, if you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to Claims Never Sleep. You can find us on your favorite streaming platform, and you can also find us on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in.
This is the Claims Never Sleep podcast, presented by Cruiser Mitchell, with your host, Meghan Henry.